Hello everyone, thank you for joining our Solution Spotlight today as we're here with Trenton Agri Products as we explore how they've been using dataPARC on their road to plant efficiency. Today's presenters will be Anna Maloney and Joe Shanley. I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves.
My name is Anna Maloney. I am a regional sales manager at dataPARC. I'm an electrical engineer by education and have over 20 years of industrial controls and data experience. I've held many roles over the years in distribution, manufacturing, and integration. And today I have the pleasure of talking to Joe Shanley of Trenton Agri Products. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Joe.
Hi, my name is Joe Shanley. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Trenton Agri Products. We are a 50 million gallon a year ethanol plant in southwestern Nebraska. A little background about me. Formerly, I'm a chemist. I've had about 10 years in the ethanol industry at 3 different facilities. So that's pretty much everything about me, I guess.
Great, thank you both so much. Before we dive into it, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please ask them in the question box and we'll try to get to them at the end. If we don't, we will definitely send you an email with follow-up. You can also email questions to dp-info@dataparc.com. And as always, we have the community forum. Speaking of the community forum, this webinar will be available along with all of our others on the community forum and available on our YouTube channel after the fact. So go ahead and check out what else we have up there. As for an agenda, Anna's going to go ahead and start with a dataPARC overview, talking about integration and some of the features in ParkView, and then hand it over to Joe to talk about the ways that his site has been boosting productivity and improved communication, time savings, some data entry integration, and give some other tips. And then there'll be time for Q&A at the end. So without further ado, let's get into it.
A fundamental goal of dataPARC software is connectivity. So basically being able to use being a single window to all of the relevant data at your site. Now, dataPARC is a source agnostic system, meaning that you don't necessarily have to have the dataPARC historian. So you can be connected to the dataPARC historian, a different historian, connect also to your LIMS, MES, ERP, and even other data sources. Say you have like a web connection and you want to be able to take in temperature or humidity and view all of these in a single normalized view via trending or graphics, just via drag and drop. I wanted to share just an overview of some of the pictures of the tools available. We won't be covering all of these today, but you can see here's the advanced trending. We have batch overlay, so batch analysis where you can overlay your batches. And today, I think we're going to be having a look at the Excel add-in, some manually entered data, alerts, and control charts, but there's much, much more available to you. So now that we've had sort of a quick introduction into dataPARC, let's kind of get into it. So Joe, are you ready for some questions?
Sure.
And feel welcome to share your screen. One challenge that many manufacturers have to face is trying to effectively summarize a 12-hour shift into some concise handoff to the next shift and make sure that nothing important gets missed. Can you share how Trenton Agri Products went about improving your shift handoffs?
Yeah, so kind of like you mentioned, Anna, we had some challenges early on with how we were going to get a 12-hour shift communicated in 15 minutes. And I think it was very common for people to say the plant's running good or everything is fine. And I don't think it was that anybody wanted to particularly not disclose what was going on, but they didn't necessarily have a good way of thinking about what happened in that whole day and how do I summarize it. And so what we really did was we developed a fairly simple spreadsheet where we just put some of our favorite tags, things that have happened to us or things that we know that the operator should be looking at in the left column. And when we open this spreadsheet and would hit enable editing, it would start to pull some of that data real time. That data will then give us some real information as to what happened, and we can put a control limit of where we think that value should be. And this at least gives one operating crew the opportunity to go down this column and just talk about some of the things that might be going on. And in this particular example, we're just coming up out of a shutdown, so we have a lot of interesting things to talk about at shift change. This is kind of what the process looks like and the way things are going here. So the operators would come in and they would have a shift change, and they would be able to explain, maybe we have a high drop sugar, the beer well was a little full. Again, we're coming out of shutdown, potential for a roof landing. We're just starting to fill that tank after doing some work on it. But it lets them have a lot more in-depth conversation around what's going on in the plant within that real short handoff. I have to give the caveat here, there's a lot of things that are showing up on this list, but we're coming out of startup. It's kind of a new condition. So it definitely will give you a lot of messaging, but a typical day for us, maybe 2-3 of these light up in a day. One of the things that we wanted to avoid with this was having way too many of them give an indication and then they become a nuisance or something that people avoid. So being very thoughtful about where you set those limits is very important in this.
Well, absolutely. And I think we picked a good day to do this because it was a great example of the sheet, but I understand it might have a lot more in it. That's really great. How many tags are you using for this?
I think we just keep adding tags as we think something is important. So for us, yeah, we pretty much have our top 100 tags. Sometimes some of these tags are direct values. Some of them are the maximum for the day. Some of them are the minimum for the day. Some of them are the average. And in one particular interesting instance for us, we actually have some that calculate relative to other tags. So we use some calculated tags. In this particular case, we have a tag here that's using the vacuum and distillation and comparing that to what the calculated boiling point should be at that particular pressure, giving us just a rough guide if we should be watching base losses or distillation temperatures a little bit more closely. So they're not just all instantaneous numbers. Some of them are a little more complicated. But when we started out with this, it was very straightforward, and now we've kind of gotten to the point where if we do miss something, we just say, we should really add this to the sheet.
That's really great. So I'm looking here, you're using the dataPARC Excel add-in, right? What else are you using? What are you using to create this within this tool?
Yeah, so real kind of simple. What we use the dataPARC add-in. When we started, we used a lot of this data normalize feature, but what we realized is that it pulled a lot of data and it wasn't quite as fast as what we can do with the function painter. Also, the function painter gives us a lot more flexibility if we want to look at a particular tag from a certain statistical point of view. So pretty much all of these values in column B are they were all built with the function painter in one way or another. These limits were based kind of a little bit on our experience and a little bit on where we think they should be. And then in column D, this was a real simple if formula. So in this case, we can say, if B6 was greater than where we think that upper limit should be, we'll just have it put the words high drop sugar there. Otherwise, it's just an open set where it says nothing. And so a lot of these have the same sort of formula in them, but they just appear blank.
Mm-hmm. So Is it just the folks at Shift Change using this, or have you found some other uses for this report?
Yeah, I use it every day. It's on my scheduler on my computer. So at 6:30 in the morning, this thing opens up automatically. So when I get to work, it's just sitting there on my screen. So we do use it at shift change. Quite often you'll walk in the control room. You'll see an operator that just wants to get an assessment very quickly of what's going on in the plant. We have a television screen in the control room. Quite often you'll see this pulled up. I also make a daily visit to the control room at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's a little bit unique to our plant, but I think anybody that knows me knows that I only think a reasonable conversation has a lot of numbers in it. And so, this has become the conversation piece or the centerpiece around the conversations that we have.
So here, they know they can show you the numbers with this sheet. This is a great example. I like the way it's usable by everybody and really just allows people to see very quickly what's going on. I know that we can do some of this with our center line, but as I'm looking at what you're showing here, the Excel add-in and the function painter just gave you a lot more flexibility, especially with that text with conditional formatting, puts into words maybe what others might not infer from the numbers that they're seeing. Is there anything you want to add about this, or?
Yeah, I mean, and I think you summarized it very well. That's exactly the reason we went this route. When we started, we didn't exactly know what we wanted. If I had the time to sit down and build this all over again someday, I might put it in some logical order or build it a little bit differently. But it's just been an accumulation of what we've thought of just from time to time, and we've kept adding to it. But the trick to this is really the flexibility with the words in that column, because it lets people see very quickly this is what's going on. Along those lines, we may in the future look at using this where we set tags with some of our alarm limits, not necessarily like a hard alarm, but when the operator maybe moves a limit of where they would get an alarm on a tank level. Because oftentimes I think operators will forget this sort of thing or forget to record it. And then you have an upper limit maybe or a lower limit that gets moved in the DCS. And that might be our next iteration of this, is adding a series of those so that we can very quickly see after a shift change, did someone on the previous shift move a limit? And just as a way of trying to avoid some mistakes.
Yeah, I can see how that would be effective. I have another question for you. May I ask?
Go ahead.
Okay. Another challenge we've seen is the significant amount of time spent manually creating or sending reports. This takes away, obviously, from many more valuable tasks. Could you explain how Trenton Agri has helped reduce the time spent on these manual processes and maybe the impact that's had on your productivity?
Certainly. I think one of the things for us that we had a very large challenge with was the amount of Excel spreadsheets that we were trying to manage. And a lot of these spreadsheets had the same data that was being input in one spreadsheet, and maybe the calculations from one spreadsheet were being brought to the next. And what we finally realized is we needed to get the source of all of that data flowing out to the multiple reports that we had. The second thing that we realized was that the consumers of those reports, they really didn't have the tolerance to be able to adjust those spreadsheets, because the spreadsheets that they were getting, quite often they were exporting data from those spreadsheets to input into other systems, such as maybe accounting systems and such. So we had some limits, but we really spent a lot of time using the MDEs in dataPARC so that we could pull a lot of that data back to one central repository or data lake, if you will. and then we could begin querying the reports, the particular reports that we were looking for. One of the things for us might be our daily production report. And let me get it pulled up and put it on screen here for you. But it might look something like this, something that just gets emailed out to people internal to our company, people that are off-site, maybe external stakeholders, people we work with, whether those are ethanol merchandisers or distillers, merchandisers, corn purchasers, these sorts of things. So one of the things that we did is, again, we got really handy with our function painter, and every one of these data points is either data that's being brought in from the DCS, but again, data that's manually entered, like things that we would collect in the lab, like lab fermentation data. That all merges very seamlessly using dataPARC. It typically took us until maybe 8:30 in the morning, starting at 7 o'clock to gather that data, and for people, administrative folks and our production folks to all input the values. Today, the operators are inputting their values directly from a computer in the laboratory. And that information is all just flowing together. So, I would say it has saved us somewhere in the order of an hour to an hour and a half a day. We spend our time now just opening the report, looking it over, and actually spending our time doing more analysis of what these numbers mean, rather than just trying to get the reports populated.
That's great.
Along those lines, we incorporated a lot of white space into these spreadsheets, because we do have some calculations that are running on other sheets where we try to cross-check various things. So one of the easiest examples to give is our daily ethanol transfer. This is a number that's brought over from right from the DCS and brought into dataPARC. But we have a different point where operators are recording how many gallons they had in a morning transfer, how many gallons they had in the evening transfer, and that number becomes a function of manual data entry. Because if something happened or someone accidentally reset a meter, it wouldn't be as easy for us to track that down. So like this value that I've got highlighted here and this value, we actually cross-check those to within 1 gallon every day. And if they're not within 1 gallon of each other, there's the big red flag for us to say, hey, we have a little problem here that we have to get rectified. So it's definitely saved us a lot of time and effort from having to do any forensic accounting later on, because we just see those problems as they occur.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So these have been some really great examples, and this is a fabulous report. I really like the cross-check too. So are you sending these reports out using the PARC task workflow? Are you sending them automatically?
Yeah, today they are not being sent out as part of workflow. We still query the reports and read the reports ourselves internally here at the plant and make sure that nothing went wrong, or maybe somebody maybe forgot to put in a comment for a day or something like that. So we still are in the process of looking at it, but and then they do get sent out manually from there.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you could have them sent out automatically at the end of a shift or at the end of a day, or just save them into an internal folder or something.
It's interesting. We do use this feature. If I go back to our previous conversation, I generally leave the plant about 5 o'clock, but at 6 p.m. and 9 p.m., midnight, 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., this report automatically emails to me. So, if I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm wondering how the plant is doing, I can grab my phone and look at that right from my email. So We do use that feature to some degree, but we aren't using it necessarily for our daily production reports.
Sounds like you're doing a check first before, yeah. Well, I have another question. Data silos were a significant issue with values being stored in Excel, right? Limiting data entry and access to just one user at a time. So can you talk about the impact of integrating data into MDE with respect to the silos and limited access?
Yeah, I think that was a common occurrence around here years ago, where we would oftentimes call around and ask someone to close out of a spreadsheet so someone else could enter their values in. You know, those problems have all gone away. If it's a number that we input to a spreadsheet, one of the first questions we ask ourselves is there a better way, and can we input this data into dataPARC directly so we can just query it as needed? It was a little bit of an interesting learning, but we started here and got very good at querying numbers. But one of the things we realized about a daily production report is there may be numbers that are out there, but someone wants to always know the story behind those numbers. And I think one of the things that we've come to admit to ourselves is that the footnotes are probably as important as anything in the report. So one thing we adapted to was we actually have an MDE page that people can input their comments as to what happened for the day. And then those comments actually load from dataPARC directly into this report. So operations writes a sentence or two, maintenance writes a sentence or two, lab and compliance, they write one. And so it seems to add a little more robustness to the report. And again, it's all there saved in dataPARC.
That's a great report. And I love the idea of the comments, because that's saved too. So you can go back in time and see what people's comments are. Joe, can you share with us one of your MDE screens?
Yeah, this is very straightforward for us, but this is one of the screens that we might use just to start populating that report, and various people enter in numbers at different places. But yeah, it's very straightforward. It has the same look and feel as a spreadsheet, so that people just, it's intuitive for them to just simply go forward and enter a number.
What kind of data did you move into MDE? Was it only lab data? You mentioned that people commented values in these MDE reports as well.
Yeah, so we have another MDE sheet. Our daily comments, which you saw at the bottom of the Excel spreadsheet, it's a very it's significantly smaller, but it's just it's an MDE sheet that looks very similar. But instead of putting in all numerical data, they can just type the comments in to try to explain why things were the way they were for the day.
So I know one of the great pluses about MDE is that data's all now backed up to the database, and that multiple users can view or access the MDE at once. So you don't have to ask people to shut off or to log out in order for you to enter something in. Were there any other benefits you saw after moving data from Excel spreadsheets to MDE?
You know, one of the things that we were finding is that a lot of data was being copied and pasted from one spreadsheet to the next, or we could end up with transcription errors. But it just seems to be so much more efficient having all of that data centralized in one place, and then just pulling it out for whichever particular report that we're looking for. So I would say first, it did add some ease for spreadsheets, but two, it probably helped us a lot more than we even realized with the accuracy of our data.
Well, Joe, I've really enjoyed all of your great examples. I don't know if you have any other small tips you guys might be utilizing ParkView for that you'd want to share with us.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that we do, and this is a little more customary to dataPARC, but we have just a very general plant overview. You know, if we're trying to have a conversation around the plant, sometimes having that visual is helpful. Sometimes it's helpful for training purposes. So from this point of view, you know, we do use, even though we've spent a lot of time talking about spreadsheets, we still use dataPARC in a very conventional sense. So, you know, we have obviously a plant overview here, but much more detailed graphics on things that we're looking at. We still try to use the visualization features in dataPARC. These have been wonderful. So we do everything from monitoring bricks of a fermenter in real time to looking at MDE data from fermentation, which you might see in this middle one here on the left, and just various other trends. So the visualization aspects of dataPARC, you know, I realize we're talking about things we're doing that are a little bit different, but we've certainly appreciated that. But to go back and answer your question, Anna, I think one of the things that we've done that's been a little bit different is we never really found a good place to store a lot of our drawings and a lot of our standard operating procedures across the plant. So I'll move this over so it's a little easier to see, but you know, the operator is going to be in dataPARC anyway. And so this made it very easy for them to get into dataPARC server and just access an SOP if they ever want to use an SOP. And we're actually finding that since we're all in this server pretty much all the time anyway, we're finding other kind of interesting variants to use there. Another one that we're using is, I think it's this one to open. We actually have a point cloud for the plant. And so this allows us to use it for training purposes, or if we have a web meeting with someone, you know, we can talk more specifically about what's going on in the plant. So, you know, we can certainly kind of zoom in and look at what's going on, take measurements across the facility, that sort of thing. So, and lastly, I think one of the things that I'd like to talk about that I think is unique to the use of dataPARC is the way we use dataPARC for our maintenance rounds. So we've brought a lot of thermography in-house, and so a lot of our equipment that we would want to maybe take an infrared scan of, just to maybe understand a bearing temperature or an electrical connection temperature, or maybe the temperature that an electric motor is operating at. We've created MDE tags for a lot of those sorts of things. And so when even our maintenance folks are engaging with dataPARC so that we can collect a lot of that baseline data and look for a shift in maybe the temperature that a motor is operating at, or the temperature that a bearing is operating at, and just trying to make ourselves a more reliable organization overall. And dataPARC has been really the best tool that we've found to work with that. Otherwise, we may just have a maintenance technician that's looking at data and could normalize that deviation if the temperature on something went up slowly over time. But once that data point is entered into dataPARC as an MDE, we can trend those sorts of things.
Wow, that's a great use case. I've enjoyed all of this so much. Thank you, Joe, for coming and sharing all of what you guys are doing at Trenton Agri Products. We really appreciate it. I think it's time for us to jump over and see if people have any questions.
Yeah, we have a couple questions. Thank you guys so much. Our first question is for Joe. Joe wanted to know who is using this, who's using ParkView at your facility? Is it operators, engineers, and how has it improved communication?
Yeah, I think it'd be a much shorter list to say who's not using it, right? I mean, everything from the daily production report that admins may send out to our laboratory personnel. Obviously, the operators are using it. And again, kind of like we talked about at the end there, we've even found ways to incorporate its use for our maintenance folks for thermography rounds and vibration rounds and things like this. So really it's touched pretty much every part of our plant except for grain merchandising.
Awesome. Sounds like you guys are really integrated. We have another question here. Are you guys using any MDE that is automatically integrated so it connects directly to the machine and uploads directly into MDE to pull those values automatically?
Yeah, so like our HPLC data, we had a module that would automatically bring HPLC data from that software package on the Shimadzu HPLC over to dataPARC. Today, we are not doing that. We just got done with the construction of a fermenter and we've changed some of our sample times and such. So that's a little bit in flux, but yeah, there's definitely a module there that can read directly from a lab instrument and bring it into dataPARC. And we've used it. It works well.
Our next question is about your MDE transition and going from one system to another. How did that transition look and were there any hiccups along the way?
Yeah, I think, if we compare it to like the old lab data module, this is definitely a lot simpler for entering numerical data. Again, the look and feel is a lot like a spreadsheet. So it's pretty easy, or the learning curve is pretty easy. People have a familiarity with, inputting a number and moving to the next cell. I would say the transition of inputting our commentary in as MDEs, that probably was a little bit more challenging. I think trying to find out how to figure out how to briefly state and concisely state what we were trying to do in a given day or shift. That took a little getting used to, but I would say after a month or two, people adapted to realize it's okay to just type something in as an MDE, or as an MDE comment rather.
Okay, I have a bit more technical question. Joe, you can go ahead and answer whatever you like, and then maybe we can kick it over to Anna. But can you expand a little bit more on the real-time data integrations? Can this be integrated with floor machinery? And is it easy to transfer historical data into dataPARC?
Yeah, it's an OPC server, right? So it's taking and querying our DCS data and moving it to a data historian. And so, that part, from my point of view, it looks pretty easy because it's reliable and it works. What all that looks like in the background is probably significantly more complicated than that. So I guess that's a part where I'll kind of stop and hand that part off to Anna.
Sure. So there are two components to dataPARC. One of them that we were talking about is the dataPARC tools. And so some of this crosses over into perhaps questions about dataPARC historian when you're talking about backfilling the data. So I'll talk first about our dataPARC tools, which is some of the stuff that you saw, or all of the stuff that you saw here. So we have various vendor provided APIs or SDKs or OPC or other ways that we would collect information from your other data sources. It would remain on those data sources and be pulled as it's useful or needed for use on dataPARC tools. So as you're pulling it up into trends or anything like that. So I hope I'm answering the question for the real-time data integration. So if you had a PI system, for example, we could apply those tools using the PI SDK for connectivity. We could also connect to an MES to gather information there, and we could also collect that manually entered data as well. And then if you wanted to keep or restore historical information or backfill historical information, we do have a dataPARC historian, and we have the ability to very easily move that historical data into our historian to have it readily available for dataPARC.
Great. Thank you so much, Anna and Joe, for this presentation and everything. That is all the time we have for questions today. If we've missed your question, we'll definitely send you an email with a response. So if you're furiously typing, don't worry, we'll get to you. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll catch you on the next one. Have a great day. Bye.